so for these people's safety, you can't penalize a person for being an addict, yet you're supplying. Your system allows for the supply of these drugs. So there's a lot of things that have to be looked into account. It's a broad issue that comes from different levels: disability, race and equity, drugs. It comes to mental health. The uniform question, there are certain places, I think it's Riverside. Riverside, when they're intake, they have nurses. These nurses are mental health nurses for the intake of their the people that they're intaking. In San Diego, we have registered nurses. The difference is they're not specialized in mental health cues and mental health issues. So we have, of course, a breakdown in this mental health, people with mental health losing their lives. So it's one of the recommendations of the audit from the state is that they hire mental health nurses versus standard nurses. Now, you might be aware already that in the Elisa Serna case that I mentioned earlier, there was a nurse and a deputy responsible for her death. Now, initially, when our group got involved, the CLERB, the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, and we picked that up as being monthly. We were there since last year, monthly, showing up to their meetings, and people weren't showing up to their meetings because nobody really knew what the CLERB did. So we educated the community what the CLERB does, how important it is for you to show up to their meetings and make demands on the CLERB. So we asked the CLERB, we saw this case in the ruling of the CLERB. The CLERB said no one was at fault for Elisa Serna's death. We made a big stink about it. We went to the media. We pulled this meeting, this data out, and we said somebody has to be responsible for that. She was asking for help. No one did anything. What is your protocol for people who are complaining of drug overdose? And you not overdose, but drug. She was coming off of her drugs. So what are your Narcan policies, and were they followed? The reason why I brought all this up is that you may be aware that the nurse has been brought up on charges involuntary manslaughter, not a deputy, not a single deputy yet. And there were more deputies involved. So we're still waiting for we're not satisfied with this partial injustice in this legal justice system. The only person charged is a nurse. Come on, you gotta do better than that. I mean, the nurse is not innocent because she has a duty. If that person falls and hit her head, some deputy shouldn't be able to override her and say, don't look at that. Don't even help out. She just doesn't want to be here. She has a duty. Doctors have duties. Medics have duties that we have to that supersede all this other stuff, especially if the person is nonviolent, especially that. So at this moment, the nurse is up on uh, involuntary manslaughter charges. The sentencing, well, the court hearing starts the preliminary in February. I think it's February 22nd, and if I might have those dates wrong, but anyway, it's coming up soon, coming up here really soon. And the mother of Elisa Serna, who, as soon as we started working on this case, now mind you, we don't know Elisa Serna, never met her. She's just a important person. She's a person that makes her important, period. So we're fighting for Elisa Serna. Unbeknownst to us, her family from Montana is on the call here in San Diego because they want to say something to the CLERB. They don't know us either. So all the community members, like about a dozen people, are just speaking up for Elisa Serna, who they never met. And it was so overwhelming to her family that they couldn't speak at the CLERB. They couldn't speak. They were in the background crying. So after that, they called us up and was like, we're so appreciative of what you're doing for our daughter. This is the mother and the father and brothers and sisters. We're so appreciate what you're doing for Elisa. You don't have to do that and all this kind of stuff. So we appreciated that you're doing it. And we told them, we're on your side. We're doing this because she was a human being and she deserves justice. And so do you. So their family has been on our team since 2019, fighting for Elisa Serna, and they backed us up asking for the audit. We don't do these things in a vacuum. We do it from victim-centered approach. So we have these families and we make sure that we're speaking on their behalf if they're not ready to speak, because most of them aren't. You just lost a loved one, and you're not ready to go and scream and shout. You're still grieving. So we ask them if we can speak for them. And then there are certain people who literally have no family. They just this one lady, she has the most family she had is the one that died in custody. Her husband, Omar Arroyo, he died, and she was married to him. She has no family out here, so she was still too distraught to speak up for her husband. And we did that until she got the courage and the strength to be able to speak up. So this is how we operate from the family-centered perspective, changing laws and policies to increase the life expectancy in the jails. So that campaign was called Saving Lives in Custody campaign, and that's exactly what we're after. With the Racial Justice Coalition, currently after the I Can't Breathe campaign, the chokehold campaign, after that was passed in the city and the state, we moved on to the Prosecute or Resign campaign with the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. So that is a campaign to say, with all these officers who are going rogue and harming the community, you need to prosecute those guys or let somebody else come in to do it. And people see that campaign as being very harsh because we say or resign, and people focus on the resign, but we wanted to focus on the prosecute. Some people wanted to resign. They do. And some people just love her, you know? So the district attorney, Summer Stephan, is her I'm speaking of. District Attorney Summer Stephan, we're saying prosecute these rogue officers or resign and allow someone else to do it. And this is what we see not only here, but throughout the nation, where officers have so many rights as an officer that they cannot be prosecuted by the community. And we're trying to change that. The Police Officer Bill of Rights, which makes them immune to things that we all would be held accountable for. Doctors are held accountable for making mistakes and doing things maliciously. So are nurses, so are chefs. If a chef gives you food poisoning, you're held accountable. Law enforcement should be held accountable as well. And you can take the doctor's certification, the nurse's certification, the chef's certification in San Diego, in California. I'm sorry, in California, you cannot decertify an officer. So if you remove an officer for racism, patterns of racism here in San Diego, they can go to San Francisco and get a job. They're still a police officer. So we're working to remove certification, which some states have done that, not California. We can't decertify officers for egregious actions against the community. So I know I've given you a lot of things that we've been doing. And I think I saw some questions in the chat. So maybe I'll go to that if that's appropriate. Should I do that? Okay. So do you feel the current CLERB, Citizen Legal Law Enforcement Review Board is what it is, will be more effective? Okay, so we've been working with that to make sure that they are more effective. And we've been doing that since 2019. And the executive director, Paul Parker, he is definitely on our side. He is a reform-minded executive director, and he is on board exactly with what we're doing. And the report that came out just last week, the audit on in-custody jail deaths, also mentioned the CLERB. They discussed the in-custody jail deaths from 2006 to 2020, and a lot of it was before some of these CLERB members were here. But what's important about the CLERB is that of all the, I think it was 185 deaths since that time, 50 of them were not even investigated. Yeah. 50. So it's really damning to them. And what they do, how did the CLERB respond? They responded positively. We accept the reform. It's our fault that this happened, and we're going to do better. We're going to not let these things slide through because they have to investigate it within 1 year or they are dismissed. Just recently in 2020, 22 cases were dismissed without ever being investigated because they're misprioritized. Death should be first in investigation, and somebody being slapped should be towards the end or somebody called the N-word or whatever should be towards the end, but death should be first. And they were misprioritized. They were like first come, first serve. And then deaths, somebody probably, this is just me being jaded, probably moved the deaths to the back. So 22 cases, we had no idea until this audit what they were about. So 22 overall, 50 death cases were not even reviewed by the CLERB. And the CLERB's response is, we're going to do better. We have to do better. It's our responsibility to the community to do better. The Sheriff's Department's response was different. The clerk, the auditors didn't have the qualifications to make judgments that they made. They unfairly associated law enforcement with some of these deaths and blah, 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 blah. But they said at the end, we accept the recommendations, changes, but we don't accept the findings. But I thought they were tied. I thought the recommendations are based on the findings and you're making recommendations. So this whole thing is just, and we didn't expect anything less from law enforcement. Now, I'm drumming on law enforcement, but I am not an anti-law enforcement person. I am anti-rogue officer. I'm anti-bias. I'm anti-discrimination. That's what I am. And it exists in law enforcement, and it exists in medicine, and it exists in housing, and it exists in employment. It exists everywhere, but law enforcement is not immune. So let me go to, yes.
All of our members that you can ask questions to Mr. Miller through the chat function, and I will ask him your questions. So we have a second question for you, Mr. Miller. People in jail, and this is a surprise, I think, to a lot of us, actually haven't been convicted of a crime yet, many times. They're just put in jail temporarily, but yet they die, which is a complete violation of their civil rights. What are your proposals to remedy this?
Yes, well, these policy changes where it's a system or a style called decarceration. A lot of people don't have to be in jail. Like I said before, the mental health, but especially misdemeanors. There are misdemeanors who do not have to be in jail. So the question becomes, why are they in jail waiting their trial? Why? And it's because of it's classist. They're not able to bail themselves out. That's why we're trying to get rid of this bail system where poor people, generally people of color, cannot afford to bail themselves out. They have to sit in jail to wait for their hearing. Where if you are a person of means, even moderate means, you can bail yourself out and wait at home until your court hearing comes up. So a lot of these people that are in jail, they can't afford to not be in jail. And that's what it is, because anybody, if they could be at home and wait their hearing, they would be, except for extremely violent people, where they say, oh, no bail is set, you can't even bail out. Or they try to make it so high that people can't bail out, but some people of means can still bail out. So that is the remedy. One of the remedies for not letting people who don't belong in jail to be there in the first place is this decarceration movement. And one of those things in decarceration is removing the bail system, which is classist.
Can you speak to us a little bit, Mr. Miller, about the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think, frankly, a lot of us white people feel is an attack on us, or it's an attack on the whole concept of any kind of police. I think there are a lot, I hear constantly from even educated people who read the newspapers, just comments that show a total lack of understanding of what the movement intended to do. And do you feel that it's changed? Has it gone away? Is it still here and valid? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on the whole Black Lives Matter, I like to start from the beginning. Black Lives Matter, the concept, did not start in 2016. It didn't. It started when Black people came to the shores of North America. So every slave revolt, every Martin Luther King, every Frederick Douglass, every Sojourner Truth, every person